I want to continue our topic of 100 mitzvot. So far, we're on the fifth one here. These are all part of daily Jewish living. We're doing Talit. The upcoming ones in this daily Jewish living are tefillin, kippah, loans to others, and maaser, tithing. So we're going to finish tzitzit today. So last time we talked about it, we mentioned that there's two elements. There's multiple reasons why people wear or why people put on talit, tzitzit on their clothing. One, but we mentioned two different parts of the Torah. One part of the Torah talked about how it's to protect us from sin. Another part of the Torah talked about how it's a uniform. And there's kind of like a different ways to relate to the tzitzit. But I want to talk about some practical laws connected to tzitzit. Just kind of go through the list here. So the obligation of tzitzit is special in that it's not an obligation. It's not a mitzvah that everyone has to do every day. Meaning, if you wear a garment with four corners, you put a tzitzit on them. But there's no obligation from the Torah to put on a four-corner garment. We do it anyway, at least the men, and women are exempt from it. If they do, it's like any other mitzvah that is dependent on time, women are exempt from, but there are women who do put them on. But we, if you put on a four-corner garment, then you're obligated to put tzitzit on those four-corner garments. If you don't put on a four-corner garment, so you didn't do the mitzvah, but you didn't do a sin. But they say it's better to try to wear talit, for men at least, throughout the day, so you can have the mitzvah as much as you can. They say it's a certain protection in doing so. So what are tzitzit put on? They're put on clothing, right? So if something's not made for clothing, even though it has four corners, you don't put tzitzit on it. What's an example of that? Something has four corners, but you don't wear it as clothing. What? A towel, blanket, okay. What? Tablecloth, yeah. Okay. Another example is it has to go around your body. You have to wear it like it's clothing. So a scarf, although it has four corners, you don't wear it over your body, so it's not obligated in tzitzit. The mitzvah of tzitzit is during the day, because it says, Uri temoto, you should see them at a time when you see them. So it's not in the night. Although people do, I wear my tzitzit all day. I wear it to sleep too, my talit underneath my clothing. But there's no obligation necessarily in the night. And it should be on a garment with four corners. So if there's three corners, you don't have to put tzitzit on those three corners. And if there's five corners, you don't have to put them on the five corners. Now, how do you decide which corner you put it on? There's five corners. Anybody ever seen a five-corner garment? All right, so it's not that prevalent. It's not the big common issue. But you put it on the four furthest ones, whatever that means. Let's say you have like two close ones, the furthest one. Just two more things. There's two laws I'm not going to talk about, which actually could make a whole Torah on themselves. What if your strings break on your talit, your tzitzit, or your talit katan? So if one of them broke, it's definitely not a problem. If more than one broke and there are different, it gets a little complicated, but definitely if one of them broke off, it's not a problem. Although it's always better to have as beautiful tzitzit and like perfect as possible. Another topic I'm not going to talk about is the blue string. I'm not talking about that, but I want to just mention two more things. So what material should you make the talit from? What's the ideal material? What do you think? What? So, okay. Any other? Wool. So you can make it from any material, but there's everyone agrees that wool is the material that the Torah mandates you using. Some say the Torah extends that to other materials as well. Some say no. Some say that only the rabbis obligated us to put tzitzit on clothing that's not from wool. That's why people are careful to put on wool. Like if you're wearing a talit katan underneath your clothing, it'll be from wool. I only wear them from wool. And trust me, it's not easy to do that in the summer. I've been to some synagogues where all the people were wearing wool and there was not air conditioning. That was a very, smelly, and I had to really push myself hard to serve Hashem in those conditions, but I did. Anyway, but so that's why people will be very careful to have wool for the talit katan underneath their clothing and also for their talit gadol. Finally, one last topic is interesting. You have to tie the tzitzit for the sake of the mitzvah of tying tzitzit. Let's say someone's just like, oh, those Jews, they're doing something really interesting, or maybe they're a Jew themselves. I'm going to tie the tzitzit I'm just going to tie it like they tied it, but they didn't do it because it was a mitzvah. So that you can't, those tzitzit don't count. So it gets, but you have to do it with the intention. So when I was in Israel recently, just a few months ago, I was making sure that the gentleman was tying my tzitzit, like he was paying attention to what he was doing. And he had intention that he was doing it for a mitzvah because he was getting all these calls. And I was like, concentrate on what you're doing. And he did a good job. But let's say you have machine-made tzitzit. So can the machine have intention to tie your tzitzit for a mitzvah? There's such a thing. It saves time in making the tzitzit with the machine. So the machine doesn't have intention to tie them for the mitzvah. So there's debate around that. Some say, yeah, only handmade tzitzit you should use. Machine-made, machine doesn't have intention. Others say that the person who pushes the button on the machine and they had intention for it being a mitzvah, the machine is like an extension of them tying the tzitzit. So people rely on that if you need to, like if you're tight with finances or whatnot. But ideally, it's probably better to get wool tzitzit and also them made from by humans and not by machines. And what's also important is when you go buy tzitzit, to make sure as a certified, it's tied as like a certified hechsher, like a certification, because somebody could have tied the tzitzit and you don't know who they are. They could have made it on a machine and they could have just tapped the button and they didn't, you know what I'm saying? So you want to make sure there was some sort of someone overseeing the process. So it started from the beginning with the intention for the sake of tzitzit.